fellow Falcoholics. What is up? Welcome to the Falcoholic Podcast. We are here today to bring you our Falcons vs. Bengals Week 7 game preview. I'm your host, Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin, joined by my co-host. He is Alan Strk, repping the brand today at Alan Strk on Twitter. It is the Falcoholics' 16th anniversary. I've been here for 7 years. Alan, you've been here actually, I think, longer. I think you were writing here before I even got here. So
yeah, but I went on brief hiatus, so I'm actually at 7 years. I did.
Okay, so we're tied then. That's fine.
We're tied. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't count 2020, but besides that, since 2015, yes.
Okay, well we're in sync then with our total years here. But yeah, the Falcons did get an upset win last week. They're sitting at 3-3. So we're gonna open the show with getting Alan's take on sort of how he feels about the team at this point in the year. Then we're going to dive right into our preview, looking at the matchups in this game. Falcons going up against a pretty dangerous opponent here in the Bengals. Yes, they're just 3-3, but they played their best 3 games the last 3 weeks, started slow, and have since recovered. So we will get to that. But first, I wanted to check in with Alan because we are 6 games in. Falcons are sitting at 3-3, tied for first in the division. No longer seems like it's a fluke that this team is going to potentially be spicy in the NFC, and with the division being as weak as it is, potentially challenging even for a division title, whatever that means in this NFC South. I don't know, but at this point they're certainly in the mix. Has the season gone in your opinion for the Falcons? Is this better than you expected, about the same, or somehow are you one of those homers that was like, nah, why aren't they 6-0?
I like that you used the term spicy. What was that Greg Rosenthal tweet? The Falcons
yeah. They've graduated from feisty to spicy. Yeah. It's great.
I'm absolutely ecstatic. I did not have much expectations going into the season. I thought this was like a 4 or 5 win team at best. So to see where they're at it's enjoyable watching. And it's not just the fact that they're putting in consistent performances. You just see a real identity. Like this team, like you watch the Niners team, they didn't run the ball particularly well, but they remained committed and they were still pushing forward, like even going against the top unit, which yes, I know St. Fran was depleted, but it wasn't like they were getting these chunk runs. They really had to earn every yard, and I love the hard running style of Algier and Huntley, the offense line continuing the battle, and Arthur Smith just utilizing those different formations and personnel groupings. Like it's just, I love the efficiency, and it just against all odds where no one expected really anything from this team. They've really started to build an identity, and you see young players emerging, because this is my big issue from last year. It's like, okay, even though the team was kind of competitive and they were around to like early January, I really didn't see many young players step outside of Pitts, Lindstrom, and Terrell. And these are 4 and first round picks. You expect that from them. Besides that, I can't really say many young players contributed in a big way last year, minus like a Jalen Hawkins flash moment, or I don't know who else comes to mind. But this year, you're really seeing huge contributions from younger players. You're seeing guys week in, week out. You're Darren Hall, D. Alford, Arnold how am I say his name? Ebiketie. Unbelievable. I still can't say his name properly. I'm shaking my head. But like you're seeing these big contributions from young players, and it's not just the first round picks. Yes, of course, you want to see Drake London and Chris Lindstrom, AJ Terrell, like those guys, and Kyle Pitts, of course. But you need those players that you, especially during a rebuilding process, in the mid to lower rounds, and you're finally seeing that. And like the maturation of like a Richie Grant, who's come off a rough rookie year. I think he's been one of the more dependable players on defense. It's just, that's what I really wanted to see this year, just young players really emerging outside the top picks, and we're finally getting that. And now it's translating to victories, and now we're seeing like a real identity and just a real belief. Like you watch like the sound effects of Mariota, you look at the press conferences, you see the clips of them drinking beers, like this team is fully unified, and it's just a beautiful thing. Like just seeing where this organization has come from after being in such disarray, and not to get into off season, but we know off season was rough as well. But now it's like, okay, they're really going the right direction, and this is a team that could be more ahead of schedule, because I didn't see this team compete for a playoff spot for another year or two, and look at them now. It wouldn't be surprising to see them play in January.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, part of that certainly has to do with how well this team has run the ball. Like that's been a real catalyst, and we've known for a long time that's what Arthur Smith has wanted to do on offense to some extent, because let's be honest, like in Tennessee, that's what he did. He wanted to run the ball, hit the deep play action, have an efficient passing game behind it. And last year, the Falcons just didn't do a good job of that at all. Like they were the 31st run attack, and I think even for those of us that were maybe like confident that the run game would improve, going from 31st to third and potentially challenging for number one in the league over the next few weeks, that's pretty crazy. Much better than certainly I expected. And you got to give it to Arthur Smith and the coaching staff for really coaching up the offensive line, because they did not make major changes there at all. They swapped out centers for their rookie fourth round or second year fourth rounder this year, was a rookie last season, and they signed basically a couple of journeyman veteran guards in Elijah Wilkinson and Colby Gossett, and so far both of those guys have been solid starters for them, which is obviously a big upgrade over Jalen Mayfield. But they've just managed to get it done, and the defense too. Like, it's been not pretty often. It's been a lot of giving up, a lot of yardage. I mean, they're quite poor in terms of yardage allowed, 27th right now. But the scoring defense is a lot better. They're 19th. They've generated a lot of takeaways. I think they're 5th overall in takeaways generated by the defense. So they've managed to get it done. And that's all you can really ask from a defense that is just, we all know, is severely limited in terms of their talent, particularly up front. And a lot of that has come down to the coaching, I believe, and the other side of that is that these draft picks from last season that a lot of people were questioning, like, are these guys going to turn into anything? Like, what's going on here? A lot of them have really stepped up. We've got Taquan Graham playing a significant role. We've got Michael Walker playing a significant role. We've got, Richie Grant really taking on a major role in the secondary. And maybe Darren Hall, we're going to see, he's going to be a starting outside corner for them now this week with Casey Hayward on IR. So it's really been just some of these young players really, really paying off, and the coaching staff developing them and getting them on the field. And we've also seen a lot from this year's class of rookies. Do you feel any differently about Terry Fontenot as a GM, like now that we're 6 games into the second season, than you did like at the end of last season?
That's a very good question. I didn't really have much opinion of Terry Fontenot after the first year.
It's tough after only 1 year.
It was such a brutal cap situation. The fact that they trade Deion Jones hopefully will now benefit them. So I wasn't really looking at what Terry Fontenot did, just because it's really a 3-year process. And I know you kind of want to look at that way with Arthur Smith, but it's hard because it's just on the field with Arthur Smith. It's just like you're gonna assess what he does from a decision-making standpoint to a schematic standpoint. Like you gotta be objective about it. You gotta assess it. So I think it's easier to assess Arthur Smith to Terry Fontenot. But that's a really good question. I think it's slightly getting better, especially now. Like, I want to mention Troy Anderson, who I really didn't think was going to see the field much this year, and he looks way ahead of schedule. Like, he looks like someone that could play 40, 50 snaps a game and not be overwhelmed. So the fact that they took a chance on a guy who was relatively raw coming out in the second round, and he's a contributor immediately, I think just speaks volumes. And so, yeah, I don't. I just keep on. I can't really grade him right now, but look, how can you not be more encouraged based on what's happening?
Absolutely. It definitely makes you feel better given everything that's sort of happened, and getting to see all of these younger players really step into bigger roles. I think that's been something that's been really nice to see, something that I've enjoyed. And again, you mentioned like Troy Anderson. It was like, how early are we actually going to see him? But early, like he's been playing basically since week 2, getting some snaps on defense, and he had to step in and start this last game. It does appear that Michael Walker will be back. It's a good time for us to sort of check out the injury report real quick. But today we did see AJ Terrell, Michael Walker, Ade Ogundiji, Isaiah Oliver, and Taquan Graham all register full practices. So it does seem like all of those guys, their status is not in doubt. D. Alford is not practicing, so that could be a potential loss. And then Jared Bernhardt not practicing either. But it's nice to see, particularly in the secondary, after losing Casey Hayward, it looks like they're going to get AJ Terrell and Isaiah Oliver out there. So what do you think about the secondary now without Casey Hayward before we really go into the matchups here? Are you really concerned about that loss, or do you have confidence that Darren Hall is going to be able to handle that spot?
I love this cornerback group. I think quietly this cornerback group might be the best on the roster. When you look at position breakdown, like maybe running back could be better than them, but besides that, like I think the cornerback group is they're just consistently making plays. Like we know how good Terrell is. Uh, D. Alford making plays. Isaiah Alvarez had such a rebound, and then obviously even someone like a Darren Hall, who I thought like the Rams game, he really flashed. Like he had to force fumble, he had a couple of pass breakups, but coming in spot duty, like he really showed out against the 49ers. And it wasn't just the coverage, but the ball skills.
Yeah.
I think he's always been a good, decent cover guy, but we didn't know much about the ball skills. But like the way he was just attacking the ball and just that closing speed, just like, all right, he can hang on the outside because he really didn't play much on the outside last year. He was getting more opportunities in the slot. So I'm very encouraged by this cornerback group. I am a big Casey Hayward fan. Like I think his experience and just his positional awareness is something that's be hard to replace. And it just seems like you need a guy like him on a young defense just for experience purposes. But I'm still pretty confident with this cornerback group. I think they're maturing slowly, and just based on what we've seen, watching the tape, it's like they're rarely out of position. Like if teams are covering up the Falcons, it's because it's probably through the middle of the field or they're playing zone. Like you don't really see much where guys get beat one-on-one downfield.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's they've played the deep ball well. They've struggled in zone a lot. It does seem, I think, to have been better over the last game, especially. Early in that game, it looked like they were going to get blasted the same exact way they lost to the Bucs, which was, just giving up all this underneath stuff and just failing to tackle. But they did a lot better job in the second half, limiting the 49ers offense. They sort of tightened up there. And then, like you said, Darren Hall came in to that game, ended up playing quite a few snaps, I think like 25 snaps, and had like a 90 PFF grade, broke up like 2 passes, was involved all over the place. And he's right now, he doesn't have 100 snaps, so he's not like ranked according to PFF yet, but right now he's the highest rated player on the Falcons defense with 84 snaps at 87.9. So, we'll hope that he can, if he could just stay in the 70s, that would be fantastic, essentially. So
I mean, when you help force a turnover, your grades got to be accelerated, right?
Yeah. We know that like they kill you for turnovers that you like give up, but they really reward you for the turnovers that you generate. So he's just been out there making plays in limited action, and he's going to get an opportunity this week. Of course, it will be a baptism by fire, and we'll get to that here in just a second, guys. But yeah, let's dive into this game. The Falcons going up against the Cincinnati Bengals this week. One of their toughest matchups of the year. I think we all sort of thought that the Saints would be tougher. That one seems now like, oh, maybe the Saints just aren't that good. The Bucks, I think we all thought that would have been the toughest matchup so far, but they've struggled. Like really all of the teams that we thought were going to be these powerhouse teams that the Falcons played have not necessarily turned out that way. The Bengals seem to be sort of on the upswing, unlike the teams that the Falcons have played over the last couple of weeks. So what do you think overall? Let's start, of course, with the Falcons passing game against the Cincinnati Bengals pass defense. It's a very low volume passing game for Atlanta. We know that the Falcons have quality options to throw the ball to. Kyle Pitts, Drake London headline that group. Zacchaeus quietly having a really strong year. But the Bengals have also played pretty well against the pass. I believe they are 7th in net yards per attempt allowed, 13th in yards. So they've been able to stifle the passing game pretty well. And that is something that the Falcons obviously have to pay attention to. What do you think about the Falcons' ability to move the ball through the air against the Bengals, considering also that, of course, the Falcons only threw 14 passes last week. They may not need to rely on that too much.
I can see this being a very heavy play action game where you're pretty much targeting in intermediate areas, maybe get a couple of screens there. I just don't think you really push the ball downfield this Bengals team because they really like to drop 8 into coverage. They're a team where they're going to force you to make tight window throws. And man, it was just not the type of quarterback you want to depend on to make those style throws. And it's just hard to attack them deep. They play a lot of 2-eye. I think Von Bell's having a phenomenal year. Jesse Bates has always been a really good cover safety. Wouzier has been just revitalized his career in Cincinnati. We know about Mike Hilton, one of the more physical slot corners. So they just have a really unified group where they don't allow big plays, and it just seems like they're really good at tackling as well. So I could see this is a game where Arthur Smith just really depends a lot on play action, just getting the ball out quick and just kind of taking the safer route. And pretty much getting obviously Pitts, you like to see him get 6 to 8 targets if possible, but ultimately it really depends on the pass attempts. I think for the Falcons, like their barometer is like if they could keep Mariota under 25 throws and have the running game flowing, that's probably their recipe for success.
Yeah, and really with the Bengals, like you said, Awuzie's had a great season. Hilton's been having a very good season as well. The weak point there is Eli Apple, the other outside corner, who has not been having a great year. Jesse Bates, by his standards, not having as good of a season, but you sort of think that will turn around at any time. And then Von Bell, again, that's a very dangerous safety duo. They haven't had like the best seasons yet, especially by their standards. But again, those are two guys that I trust to play well. But yeah, I think you like your matchup. Like if you can get Eli Apple matched up on like Drake London, then you probably like that matchup. And Kyle Pitts, the thing about Awuzie, if I remember correctly, I think he's a little bit of a smaller. No, I think he's 6 foot, so he's not that. Mike Hilton and is the smaller corner. I was getting him confused with Awuzie. So, if you get like Pitts in the slot or Drake London in the slot, those guys, that's a potential size mismatch there. So you do wonder if they try to focus the efforts there. The pass protection. Oh yeah, go ahead. If you
mentioned, they do get grabby. You can draw penalties, particularly with Eli Apple, who can become a bit of a penalty machine. So I just want to mention, like, even though I don't expect them to, like, I really love the back shoulder throw that Mariota made to London. I don't know how many times again they could do that, but like in those isolated situations, like I could see Drake London or Kyle Pitts giving Eli Apple fits just because he is an emotional player, and when you get grabby, refs will likely call penalties on you.
Yeah, that's one part of this offense that I think the Falcons can do more, especially if they start threatening the deep shots more often, just to draw penalties if nothing else. And that's the one concern you have is that can this offensive line hold up long enough for the deep shots? And so far, they've been not very good at pass protection. They've been much better at run blocking, to the point where they're one of the NFL's best run blocking offensive lines. But in terms of pass protection, it's very, very inconsistent at best. The Bengals do have a strong defensive line. It's much stronger against the pass than it is against the run. But they got Trey Hendrickson out there. You got Hubbard, I think. I can't remember the first name.
Yeah, Sam Hubbard.
Sam Hubbard, that's right. I was like, Chris Hubbard, that's not it.
Very steady edge rusher. He's the type of number 2 edge rusher you love to have on your team.
Oh, yeah. BJ Hill's in there. I think DJ Reader is on IR.
Yeah, he's been out since, I believe, week 1, and their stats are just showing like they've really dropped off stopping the run. Like DJ Reader's like a 340-pound nose tackle who is a big part of what they do. Without him, they've had issues stopping the run. Like watching the highlights, I thought Kamara had by far his best game of the season, and New Orleans ran on him quite a bit. Yeah,
and you certainly wonder when DJ Reader's going to come back. It doesn't seem like it's going to be this week. He hasn't been designated to return yet. So, I mean, it could happen, but seems unlikely. So we're still, that would be a big addition for them if he does come back. It doesn't seem like that's going to happen, and they certainly have missed him a lot. But that pass rush is dangerous. Do you have any faith at all in the Falcons' offensive line to give Mariota time to hit some deep shots?
This is such a fascinating matchup because, like, I don't think any team runs more max protect than the Falcons, and I don't think any team rushes 3 more than the Bengals. It would be like hilarious if we see the Bengals rush 3 and the Falcons have like 7 to protect. Like I think that's entirely possible, which would just be hilarious visual sight. Look, that just definitely good problems. I thought McGarry had a rough game against the Niners from a pass protecting standpoint. I think Matthew's been steady, but it's just both those edge rushers. They got like those relentless motors, and they just know how to bull rush and use their hands. So I would be concerned by the matchup. I think they can hold up just because the Bengals are a bit dependent on the edge. Like they don't have much of an interior rush. But I think from a communication standpoint, things gotta get better. Maybe just because of the matchup and how good San Fran is. But there was one takeaway from the Niners game I was really concerned about. It just seemed like Drew Dahlman was all over the place when it came to like, and maybe this was something on Lindstrom and Wilkins as well. But it just seemed like he was late on a couple pickups, and it's not. There's something that Matt Hennessy struggled with a lot last year, and you hope that it's not the case with him this year.
Right, and with him, this is Dahlman's 6th start at center, so you're still hoping that he improves, and his PFF grade has improved every week. now he's only 25th in the league and not like 35th. So that we're
Yeah.
getting somewhere there.
Yeah. I think he's decent as a run blocker. He's shown a lot more, but pass blocking definitely a work in progress.
Yeah, we're still waiting on that to sort of come together for the Falcons. And that brings us to the other side of the coin, which is the Falcons' rushing attack, which, as we both know, very dangerous against pretty much any opponent, even good run defenses. And that's certainly not the Bengals. They're fresh off allowing 228 yards on the ground at the Saints last week. And overall this season, Cincinnati is 23rd in yards per carry allowed with 4.7 per tote, and 21st in overall yardage. Interestingly, they have only allowed 2 rushing touchdowns, which has them second in the league in rushing touchdowns allowed. But you have to think that's probably just a little bit of an odd statistic, because when you allow that much yards per carry, then but maybe they're better in the red zone, And
I don't think Taysom Hill really did much last week, so it wasn't like one of those wacky Taysom Hill games. Like, I think they just got consistently ran on by Kamara and Mark Ingram.
Yeah. So I mean, I this is clearly a matchup that the Falcons are going to go after as much as possible. They've got Tyler Algier and Caleb Huntley, who both have just been out there taking carries and smashing teams to dust. That's going to be the game plan going into this one, you think. And then Marcus Mariota has really, I think, hit the run game much more consistently over the past week, past couple weeks, and been very effective there. So what do you think about the Falcons' rushing attack? Is this really the key to the game, is sort of using the run game to dominate Cincinnati up front?
Absolutely, because it's not just DJ Reader that's out. Likely Logan Wilson's going to be on. I think Logan Wilson has been like their unsung hero since their rise from mid last season. Like, I think Logan Wilson's one of the more complete linebackers of the league. Like his metrics are really bad. Like, you kind of look at him, he's like not particularly fast. He's not really that agile, but he just seems to always be in the right position. He's just a very savvy player. It looks like he's going to be out. If he's out, that's just another big loss for a defense that has already been struggling against the run. And I just think the Falcons, the way they use these personnel groupings, like whether it's they're running 12, 22, 13 personnel, like it's crazy how much they mix it up, and just the way they use motion to get teams off balance. And let's not discount the value of Mariota running the option. Like, there were at least 3 or 4 moments in that Niners game where they were completely off balance, just because Mario is so good at selling the fakes, like uses eyes really well. And that could be a difference maker at any point, especially in the red zone, because I think one of the coolest, and we mentioned before, like, the Falcons are like top 5 in the red zone this year.
Yeah, they're very good. Yeah,
which is I know a trademark Arthur Smith stat, but obviously, people would put like, oh, that's Derrick Henry's cheat code, but no, like, look at Arthur Smith dialing things up. So I think this is definitely their biggest advantage going up against the Bengals defense. Like, you want to see them at least get 25, 30 carries with their group between Algier, Huntley, and hopefully Avery Williams get a little more involved, because I think as you look at this matchup, it's like, okay, but keep the Bengals pulling the offense off the field as much as possible, control that clock, and just punish them, because I think the Falcons are clearly proven they can put together sustainable drives of 10 to 12 plays and kind of take the air out of teams.
Yeah, I think that's their game plan here. And you mentioned the injury. Logan Wilson did not participate either Wednesday or Thursday, so his status for Sunday is definitely in doubt, along with 2 other defensive depth players in Josh Tupou and Jeff Gunter. Alex Kappa did miss practice today as well, their guard, with an illness. So, I mean, I wouldn't be overly concerned about him missing the game if I was a Bengals fan, but you always want to monitor that stuff. And Jamar Chase has continued to be limited with his hip injury. Doesn't seem like he's going to have potential to miss the game, but if he's banged up, that certainly could be a factor. It's a good matchup for the Falcons, certainly. It's like a strength on weakness there. And turning that around, there's also a matchup of strength on weakness for the Bengals passing game going against the Falcons pass defense, which has been the weaker part of the defense so far this season. Like I said, Falcons 27th in total yardage, but just 19th in scoring, so better at preventing points. But right now, the Falcons have faced a lot of passing attempts, like an absurd amount. I think they faced the second most pass attempts of any team, if I'm correct. 31st, I think, would be the second most for defense, but they've allowed the second most yardage of any team. They are a little bit better on like a yards per attempt standpoint, right? With their 24th in yards per attempt, but they allow a lot of yards through the air, and the Bengals love to chuck the ball because they've got a tremendous group of receivers in Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, and T. Higgins, along with former Falcon Hayden Hurst at tight end.
Yeah.
What do you think about this matchup? Definitely the one to watch, I think, when the Bengals are on offense.
Yeah, this is definitely a scary matchup. Although I'm curious to see what Dean Pease's game plan is going to this one, because I think one of the more eye-opening stats I've seen recently is like how much Joe Burrow struggles when teams play too high compared to playing, say, like cover one or just any sort of like strict man coverage where there's a safety drop down. Like it just seems like whenever teams play too high, he tends to either check it down a lot more or try to force the ball downfield, which leads to turnovers. Like he really struggled against the Ravens, but now it's like, I don't know, watching that Saints game, I know Lattimore was out and the Saints defense isn't what it once was, but it just seemed like the Bengals were really hitting their stride offensively. And a lot of it just comes down to him and Chase finally hitting that rapport. Like I think him and Chase haven't quite been on the same page to start the year, but now that game against the Saints, they were clicking. And
Yeah.
with Chase, it's like, it's not just he's such dangerous vertical threat, but he's just so nasty after catch. Like he could break tackles. People forget how big Jamar Chase is. Mm-hmm. And that's something I would be concerned about, because it just seems like Zach Taylor's making it more of a priority. It's like we gotta get Chase the ball 8 to 10 times a game now, because just for whatever reason, the first few games of the year he was not anonymous, but it just didn't seem like he was as involved as someone of his caliber. Like to me, Jamar Chase is a superstar. You need to become double-digit targets game, and now it seems like they're finally there. And then to me, I think T. Higgins is probably the best number 2 receiver in the league. So it's a scary matchup. I think going as much as you'd like to see the Falcons play man, I could see, just because given the Bengals offensive line struggles and just not wanting to let plays get behind them, I can see the Falcons playing a lot more zone in this one and daring Burrow to take those chances downfield and hopefully bang on a front four to exploit a pretty below average offensive line.
Yeah, I agree. I think the key to this one is like, don't expect your guys to be able to play man. I mean, maybe Terrell can have some success. Maybe Oliver, if he's back to full health, he could handle Boyd without too much trouble. But no matter what happens out there, Darren Hall's either going to get T. Higgins or Jamar Chase, and that's going to be not something you necessarily want to see very often. So he's going to need safety help. But I assume they're going to play a lot of too high, and just blitz. I think they're going to play zone and blitz guys and try to confuse the Bengals offensive line, which has not been good. So we'll see how that goes, certainly. But I think if you can get pressure on Burrow, that messes with their whole offense. But the Falcons so far haven't been able to do that against any team except the Saints.
Yeah, and we know Burrow likes to hold on to the ball. And I just seen the Bengals. I know they try to put P-Rye in, but they'll try to occasionally fit Mixon in. And Mixon is such a liability when it comes to being a blocker. I could see why the Bengals like to put P-Rye on third down now. Like you watch certain plays of the Bengals, just Mixon, he just always blows his assignments when it comes to pass pro. So I could see whether it's Richie Grant, Sean Evans, like putting up the A gap, they could cause problems because, as much as everyone loves Joe Burrow just tends to be a bit hard-headed when it comes to like holding onto the ball and taking sacks. Like he's just someone that, kind of puts his team at a bit of a disadvantage with his decision-making, as fantastic as a player as he is. So I think that's where ultimately Falcons have to win. They just have to generate pressure in a variety of different ways.
Yeah, they're certainly going to try. They're going to give it their all to put some pressure on, and it's been very spotty this year. But I have a feeling that we could finally see Arnold Ebiketie get the sacks this week, because he's, I think, tied for second or third or something like that for most pressures of any rookie at this point. But he's played about half as many snaps as the other players that he's tied with or that are ahead of him. Mm-hmm. He's only really became a starter last week, with Ogundeji being limited and out. So he had a bunch of pressures last week. He didn't actually convert any into sacks, but they were close. So I feel like he's right there. And then obviously you like Grady Jarrett against pretty much anyone. He's usually good for at least a sack a game, and had a couple of his, robbed. The Falcons in general have had sacks taken off the board in each of the last several games. So this is not a great pass rush, but it is a creative one, and I think they're going to be able, if they can generate some level of pressure, it'll go a long way. Especially if Alex Kappa at right guard is out with this illness, if he doesn't if he's not able to suit up this weekend, this is there. I suspect they'll be very aggressive because it's like we can't just sit back and play coverage against these receivers. Like we need to make sure we get in Burrow's face as quickly and as often as possible. And it'll be a lot easier to do that if they are able to play their game right and get out to a lead and sort of smash the Bengals with their offense. So we're just going to have to hope that the Falcons offense comes to play and is sort of able to put up points and keep this from getting out of hand, and then the Falcons having to pass from behind, because that, even though that has actually not been too bad for them so far, they'd come back in both games. They got down big, but a lot to monitor there. Moving over to the run game side of this equation, the Falcons run defense, surprisingly good, I guess you could say. Falcons run defense right now, 9th in total yards allowed, 15th in yards per carry. They've been solid. They kept the 49ers run game, which was their bread and butter, to like very few yards. Certainly getting out to a big lead helps with that, but they really didn't have that 14-point lead for a large chunk of that game. The 49ers sort of roared back quickly. But they never were able to get the run game going. The Falcons did a great job of limiting that. They've been very good at stopping teams on like 3rd and 4th and short with the run. The Bengals, on the other hand, have really struggled to run the ball on offense. 29th in yards per attempt at just 3.5, just 27th in total yards on the ground. So this is a matchup where it seems like the Falcons defense actually has an advantage for once. What do you think about that?
I think the Bills are so predictable. Like I think like a first down, they're one of the more, besides Tampa Bay, like when I'm watching teams, like they always seem to run the ball on first down. There's not much unpredictability with Zach Taylor, right? And I think that's why you watch the Bengals. The Bengals have been on primetime quite a bit this year, and just like, oh man, this offense, like they're so boring. The wall, like they should be, for the personnel they have, like they have to be more expansive. Like let's get some variety in there. And I think the last 2 games they've ran the ball better, particularly against Baltimore. Mixon got going, but like this offense line, let's not forget, they've had 4 new starters, so it's going to take time for them to gel. Is this now the time? It's hard. Obviously, it's very hard to predict that, but it's just when you have 4 stars coming in, and not one of them was a particularly like big hot commodity. Like I think Alex Kappa is more of a product of Tampa Bay having like 3 all pros on their O line rather than him being particularly good.
Yeah.
And like Lyle Collins to me has just been a complete disaster at right tackle.
Right.
Cordell Volson also their left guard, kind of a liability.
I don't think he's who they wanted to start.
Oh, he's not. Oh,
I
did
don't
they draft
know.
him in the 2nd round? I think a guard. I'm trying to remember.
I'm also trying to remember, because I didn't think Cordell Volson was who they had like lined up to play there, but I could be wrong.
He's a big liability. So it's like this offensive line, like they try to run a lot of power. They'll run duo, but it's just they're so predictable, and it's just not like teams are just spy on it. Like it's like, okay, if they're under center and they're running on first down, it's like just they're there, they're in position.
Yeah.
So I think the Falcons, as long as they're schematically prepared and they have the right personnel, I think they should hold up relatively well, because I think Mixon's having a down year by standards, and I just think, man, a guy as say what you want with DPs, he has tons of experience, and I think he is a film junkie. And if you're watching film, the Bengals is pretty apparent what they like to do offensively. So he should identify those tendencies and look to shut it down.
Yeah, I mean, they've been really insistent on just running on first down all the time, and they've not been effective doing it. And they haven't changed yet. I mean, I think defensive corners are probably like, okay, like when are they going to start throwing on first down? Like I'm sure they're practicing for this. But the thing is, like, you don't even have to sell out to stop the run against this Cincinnati rushing attack. Like they're not very good at it, so you don't necessarily have to like stack the box or play the run super hard to shut them down. So I think
they're also missing CJ Uzomah a lot. He was a very stable blocker for them, and even though Hayden Hurst can make some plays in the passing game, we saw him for 2 years. Not necessarily someone that could block.
Yes, I believe his pass block grade is 26.9.
Yeah.
And his run block grade is a respectable 59.3. So,
all right. To me, like guys like him, Zach Ertz, when they block, it's just like, oh boy, they're going for a ride. It's just some tight ends just simply cannot block. But
no, and Drew Sample, I think they're missing as well.
Yes.
I think he was hurt.
Because they don't really use a fullback, I don't believe.
I don't even think they have one. Yeah, I think they just use like a sort of halfback tight end situation. But yeah, this has been certainly an offense that hasn't been able to run the ball, and I think the Falcons do have the advantage there. And honestly, that's part of the reason that I think the Falcons have been able to come back, not because they're this great high flying passing offense. It's because when teams try to run the ball and run out the clock, the Falcons, they don't let them do it. Like, they're like, you can't do it. Like, we're not going to let you do what we do. Like, we're going to keep you from doing that. And, so far it's worked for them. I mean, I think, overall speaking here, that the Falcons being 6.5-point underdogs seems a little aggressive to me.
It's rich, but
yeah.
maybe it's just tested because the Bengals, look, they are Super Bowl pedigree. They got it.
They do.
Yeah.
But it's just like, if you watch the Bengals this year, they really haven't like done that to anyone. Like looked like they were just so much better than their opponent. Like I think, I guess the Dolphins, when of course Tua was out, and I think they ended up starting even Skylar Thompson in that game a couple weeks ago. Like they won by double digits. They beat the Jets, by double digits. But other than that, I mean, you lose to the Steelers, you lose to the Cowboys, you lose to the Ravens. No, nothing disrespectful about that. But I mean, the Saints even took them 30 to, they put up 228 rushing yards on them and were challenging them all throughout that game. So this is not a team that's really blown out opponents.
They'll win decisively.
Yeah. I mean, even though they have the firepower to start doing that at some point, like, it's odd to pick them to do it against a team like the Falcons, where this is, and the points, the over under in this game is actually high, like 47.5. And it's like, do you think the Falcons are putting up all those points? Because maybe they do, because Atlanta is the
capable.
8th. I mean, the Falcons are the 8th scoring offense. I mean, scoring's down, but funny enough, the Falcons have scored more points than the Bengals so far, like a lot more. Bengals are 15th in scoring offense. So it does seem a bit disrespectful to the Falcons, but I don't necessarily blame them. And then also, you got to keep in mind, that this is like on the road, I believe, for the Falcons. So it's not, Atlanta at home or anything like that. So, I get it. I get it.
So the Bengals are a really good home team too. They do tend to have a good atmosphere.
Yeah, they do tend to do well there. But it's interesting. I do think that, this is obviously going to be a one-score game. The Falcons have made every game a one-score game except the one they just won in a blowout. And, I don't think you really know, I think the Falcons have become this team that, like, nobody really wants to play because it's just going to be unpleasant. Like, for everyone, like, you're just not, it's not going to be a fun game. It's like they really are getting back to this, like, Dirty Birds sort of, like, they're going to pound your face with the run. They're going to suffocate you on defense. Like, they're just going to wait for you to make a mistake and then just suffocate you with the run game. Like, just take as many carries as you can possibly allow.
Like, if you're the opponent and you say you haven't really watched much film of the Falcons and you're just stepping on the field, you see a guy like Parker Hesse, like, what is this guy? This guy doesn't belong in the NFL. And then, like, after 2 drives, it's like, this guy just keeps hitting me play after play.
Yes.
Like, he's just putting me on the ground. Like, he's such a nuisance. Keith Smith just blasting up the B gap and just taking me out. Like, they just, the way they use their personnel to block is just, it's phenomenal. And I do think that, look, everyone wants to complain about his usage, but dude, Kyle Pitts is making things happen as a blocker. Like, I think he's been better than people anticipate. Like, when they run like the pin pull concepts, like, he is pinning the edge rusher or edge defender, excuse me. And do a damn good job. So it's stuff like that. Like, like, of course the offensive line gets praised, but people like Keith Smith, Parker Hesse, and of course Kyle Pitts. I would hope teams know who Kyle Pitts is, but it's just like that's
Michael Pruitt. He's getting out there now. He's on the roster. My son, Michael Pruitt, is coming.
Yeah, so it's just like those types of players. It's just like the way they're contributing in the run game. It's just like you have to take account for it because they're making a difference. There's a reason why these runs are going for chunk plays at times. It's why you saw against the Browns in particular, just like, man, these linebackers are getting taken out. These edge rushers or edge defenders, I keep saying edge defenders, they're not getting any penetration. And it's just like they're running these toss plays and they're getting 10 to 15 yards. So I think that's why, it's just, you just know it's you got to be ready to tackle and you got to be ready to take on blocks. Like, I know it's not popular right now to use Brandon Staley as an example for anything, given how bad of a coaching job he's done this year. But like, I remember Brandon Staley last year was talking about with the run game, it's just like you want to force teams to tackle.
Yeah.
You want to force teams to take on blocks. That's what the running game does. And the Falcons are doing that at such a frequent pace.
Yeah.
And they have an offensive line that just fully embraces this style.
Yeah.
And I think that's why they're having so much success, and that's why I think teams are, you know, forget looking at the roster, watch the film.
Right.
You better be ready to go in for a battle, otherwise you're getting run over.
Yeah. And I mean, the Falcons just, part of the reason I assume this team is really annoying to play is because they're going to just go, like, every player is expected to block. Like, every single person has a blocking assignment, and every route on most of these plays that the receivers run is designed to, like, hurt the defense and get them out of position for a run if they, like, fall for the routes. Like, you'll see these routes that the run goes behind, and then there'll be, like, receivers blocking, like, 30 yards downfield. Like no one is able to just go out there and coast. Like, it's like if you're on the field for the Falcons, you're gonna be blocking somebody, and I think it just gets to opponents like over the course of 4 quarters. Like, shout out to Kaderil Hodge, I think, who has like 50 run blocks already or something like that. And he's got like a 70 run block grade on people. Like, this man is just like plastering corners.
Is
like,
he the new Justin Hardy?
Yes,
Justin
he's just
Hardy
out.
used to be such a great blocker.
Yeah,
Man.
he's just like, I'm gonna hit you, and I'm going to make sure that you don't enjoy this. And he does that. And then now we got Michael Pruitt out there. Who I think that I do like that move. I think going into this season, the idea was like, let's have 2 receiving tight ends. I think they were maybe imagining that the passing game was going to have more volume and they might need a secondary option in the receiving game at tight end. But there's just nowhere near enough attempts for that to be like necessary in this offense. And like, Anthony Firkser just doesn't block. Like, he's just not a plus blocker in any way. So I think you sort of de-emphasize his role, and you're like, look, if we're going to run 40 times, let's just have 2 blocking tight ends or Kyle Pitts. Like, or even play 13 personnel. Like, who cares?
Yeah.
And they've been, I think Michael Pruitt, and he could clearly catch, has that touchdown last week. So funny enough, a guy that was like a receiving specialist in college that became a blocker at the NFL level, that rare reverse transition. But yeah, I mean, I like getting another nasty blocking tight end to go along with Parker Hesse. And then, of course, Kyle Pitts is like, he's become an average blocker, which that's no small feat for a guy that really never was asked to do it at the college level. So
yeah, exactly. Because you see a lot of these star tight ends, like outside of George Kittle, they're not particularly great blockers. Oh, Kelsey's a good blocker too, but just I guess that's been like the overall sentiment for the past 20 years. It's just like the best pass catching tight ends, like you got to kind of mask them, because a guy like Jimmy Graham or Zach Ertz or even Tony Gonzalez, as much as we love them, like they just can't block whatsoever. Yeah. But now it's just like you don't have to mask Kyle Pitts. Like Kyle Pitts, you could put him. Not an island necessarily, but you could put him in positions where he could do his job, where he could pin that edge defender just so McGarry could pull and get somebody at the second level. And, those types of plays that make a huge difference. So,
yeah,
huge credit to Arthur Smith. It's cool to see a Falcons, after being such a finesse team for so long, now become this punishing team that, of course, defensively, you wish they could kind of forfeit to that. But I think just to give people an idea of like where the Falcons sit defensively, besides the Lions, no team is currently spending fewer on their defense than the Falcons.
What's that? I'm sorry.
Besides the Lions, no team is spending, currently on their cap fewer than the Falcons defensively. Like when you look at their roster, like besides Grady Jarrett, who really has a huge contract, like Casey Hayward has a decent contract, but who's really getting paid on that defense right now?
Right. I mean, it's all young guys. Like, it's all, I mean, they've really cobbled this together, and, they deserve certainly Fontenot and Smith and Dean Pease credit for being like, knowing that like we have like 60% of the cap to spend because we have so much dead money. We need to just go out and find role players so we can have a serviceable defense that's going to allow this team to at least be in games. And like, they've done that. Like, they've gone out and found contributors for very low cost. Rashaan Evans, starting caliber linebacker that they got basically for vet minimum. They found several undrafted guys that have panned out for them with Nate Landman and D. Alford and
Abdullah Anderson.
Abdullah Anderson.
Yes, man.
He's the new nose tackle. So, shout out to Abdullah Anderson, the 3rd highest graded player on the defense right now. And then it's also like, your young players have come to play this year. You've got a lot of cheap veterans that are contributing. Everything is sort of turning out well. Like, they've, I think, unearthed a few guys that are going to be contributors for this team going forward. Every single one of these young draft picks that like turns into something is just so much benefits this team so much next year and in 2024 and 2025. Like when they can actually go get like they can go spend in free agency, but it's like we don't need to go find like 7 new starters. It's like no, we just need to find like a couple of top pieces and then continue improving our depth. And it's nice. Like it's a team that's being built, I think, the right way for like long-term sustainability, sort of like more of a Ravens approach to how to do things. Like they haven't traded away all their picks. They haven't gone really aggressive for like a bunch of high-priced free agents. They've actually made an effort to get out from these big contracts. And obviously the comp picks didn't work out this year. They sort of, I think, got boxed into a bad situation after the Matt Ryan, Deshaun Watson thing went south, and they had to sign a quarterback, and that sort of ruined their comp picks. But, I think long-term, like I do wonder if Fontenot looks at what the Saints have become, which is this just constant financial disaster where and we talked about it before the season, at least I did. I don't remember if you were on one of those shows where I was like, Saints fans keep saying like, oh, well, our starters are all still here. Like we're fine. It's like, yeah, but you got rid of like all of your depth players, like all of your good rotational guys that helped your defensive line be like the deepest in the league. And
right, we're talking about that week one.
Yeah, all of these reserve guys that like kept you from being one injury away from disaster and helped you really have this great rotation. Like they're all gone. You've had to say goodbye. Like you switched out Marcus Williams for Honey Badger, and like I think we were afraid the Honey Badger would end up being really good there, but he's not been Marcus Williams. So like that strategy, I wonder if Fontenot sees that and is like, I don't want to be involved in that. Let's like go for more of the Ravens strategy, stock up on draft picks, homegrown talent that we're going to develop, and then we're going to rake in more comp picks and use that to replenish our team instead of going after the top free agents every single year and, just taking on a lot of financial risk.
I still could see them making a splash or two.
Oh, they will.
2023, just because they'll have the space to do it. But yeah, no, you're making very strong points, and especially given Fontenot's experience working with the Saints, because, oh man, like they've been playing with fire for years, and now it's starting to crash down. And like when you're in that NFC South, that's the division where you're looking across and just like, oh, what's this team doing? Like you kind of have to learn from other organizations' mistakes. And I think looking at it, just through the communication with Arthur Blank, like I assume, Fontenot's telling Arthur Blank, and Arthur Blank's telling him, like, I don't want to be in the same situation I was 3-4 years ago. So it's just a matter of allocating your resources in the most efficient manner. So it's I'm excited about the future, even though like right now the president is so exciting. Like we've seen in free agency for the past few years, it's been pretty much a non-event for Falcons.
Yeah.
So now it's like, okay, 2023, they're going to be linked quite a bit to some players, and I just think defensively, there's still 3 or 4 positions where they could definitely bolster.
Yeah, I think that they will. I agree with you. Like, I think the comp picks probably aren't going to start hitting until like 2024, because I think they do need to make a few big additions this year, and that's going to probably wipe out anything they would possibly gain. But I think going forward, long term, I wonder if that will be more of the strategy. But yeah, I mean, they have all this money, they need to spend it, and I think some of that they might use to like front load some of their own extensions, right? Like Chris Lindstrom, maybe McGarry if he keeps it up, Olamide Zaccheaus, that I think they probably want to keep around, guys like that. They have a lot of guys they could bring back or lock up if they so chose. And when you front load the contracts, you like help yourself maintain your cap flexibility in future years. So it's like if you don't get aggressive and try to spend every penny you have, and instead you sort of like if you look at the Jake Matthews contract, they front loaded that contract so that 2023 he's making $34 million in a year that they knew they would have so much cap space. And then after that, he's making like $18 million a year, and it's like mostly unguaranteed money at that point. So like they've set up that contract to where they can keep Matthews as long as he's playing well, and then they're not bound to him. But he gets all of his money like early. Like he gets all of his money next year, so he's pretty much set in terms of the guarantees next year. Just really clever ways to design these contracts, and I'm really interested to see what Fontenot does when he actually has money to spend. And that's going to be a big theme of this offseason that's going to make this actually an exciting free agency for like the first time, like you said, in a really long time. And I'm definitely interested to see how things develop over the rest of this season and what the true sort of needs end up being when the dust clears at the end.
I think there was some anticipation in 2020, and then they ended up with Dante Fowler and Todd Gurley.
Yeah. Well, he can't hurt us anymore, Alan. He's no longer here. So
Yeah. But wait, I don't know how much you watch the Cowboys. It's very ironic just watching Dante Fowler make plays when he's the fourth best defensive lineman on his team.
it's a great role for him when he's like the
I
fourth
mean,
best guy.
more power to him. Dan
Yeah.
Quinn, still a believer.
Yes, he is.
But what's your prediction for this one?
I do think that the Bengals will pull this one out, but I do think it's going to be a close game. I think I have the Bengals winning this 27-24. Just because I think this is the toughest game that they're going to play probably over the next like 7 games. So I do think it's very possible they lose this one. This is a tough game against an opponent that's starting to get hot. But again, like if it really is that score, that means that the Falcons are probably having a chance to win it at the end, and that means it could flip either way just at the drop of a hat. So that's where I'm leaning. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat with you. I think Bengals, I got them winning 31-24. You just have to talk about too much firepower offense. I think Tyler Boyd is someone to watch out for. Like, you know what's crazy with Tyler Boyd? Like, he makes the same move every time. Remember, like, back in, what was it, like 2013, Tony Gonzalez would catch like a 6-yard hitch, and then he would like turn the corner, and the defender would always miss. Like, do you remember that at all? Like, Tony Gonzalez would do the same move after a catch, and somehow the defender would miss the tackle every single time. He would turn like a 6-yard into like a 12-yard catch. Tyler Boyd has started to do this every single time. He'll fake going to right and then swerve to the left, and he picks up an extra 4 yards. So it's just little things like that. I just think the Bengals, like, to me, they have the best wide receiver trio. Like, I think the 49ers have the best pass catching trio between Debo, Kittle, and Ayuk. Like, if they had a much better quarterback, that offense, my God, they'd be firing all cylinders. But the Bengals, I think, from a wide receiver standpoint, they're like the most complete unit. Like, I think Tyler Boyd is really good, and the fact that now Hayden Hurst has found a niche is just, I think they have too much through the air, and then defensively, I think they're just one of the best coached units in the league. They don't really make much mistakes, and I think at some point it's gonna be hard. Like, the Falcons can't really drop back too much, and if Falcons become a pure drop back team, things are gonna start to crumble. So I think that's where I'm a bit concerned. And I think, look, the Bengals, I was really high on the Bengals coming into the year. I know some people thought the Super Bowl hangover, but I thought this Bengals team was definitely a playoff team. And, it's kind of like the 49ers. I'm really high. As high as I am on the Falcons right now, I'm still very high on the Bengals. And I think there's a talent gap there. And that's why I'm going to the Bengals 31-24. But it should be a hell of a game. I think this is probably if you're looking from like an NFL general standpoint, this is the second best game of the week. Besides Niners Chiefs, this is like a really good game.
This is a bad week, but
this is a very bad week.
This is one of the only good games, I would say. And I think if the Falcons deliver a good game here, then they're going to really start being respected by the talking heads as like, oh, this is one of the more fun teams to actually watch. Like, this is one that you got to circle every weekend. Hopefully that'll lead to this team getting some damn primetime games later in the season, because kind of embarrassing that they only gave them Thursday Night Football. I get that everyone was like,
but look, power flexing could be Falcons Ravens.
Yes.
Hey, I think week 18 Falcons.
Yep, Falcons
Could
Bucks.
you imagine division on the line?
Yeah,
that would be.
That's what we're projected to see right now. So if the Falcons keep it up, it could definitely end up there.
And we know NBC will not hesitate to put Brady on national television.
No, absolutely not. So that's our best chance probably to get another primetime game is week 18.
I don't know. I'm trying to remember the schedule off the top of my head. Like, I know there's a Ravens game somewhere. Maybe that'll work.
It's right after the bye, I think, or something like that. So it could be an option too. But guys, going to be an exciting game. Thanks for tuning in with us on the Falcoholic Podcast, our Falcons vs. Bengals Week 7 game preview. If you're listening to the audio, leave us a 5-star review. If you're watching on video, do like and subscribe. We really appreciate that. You can check us out on Patreon if you want to support the show. It's patreon.com/FalcoholicLive for early access, ad-free versions of all these podcast episodes, along with some other cool perks. Check out the Falcoholic Discord, which is in the show description. And before we take off, I want to thank my co-host Alan Strk. He's at Alan Strk. This will be the final game preview for a while. He's going to be joining me instead on the post-game shows due to some scheduling shuffling. But I think we're going to enjoy his takes even more immediately following the game. That's my inkling. But Alan, anything you want to plug?
Yes, and I just recently posted a story about Marcus Mariota because I'm very critical of Marcus Mariota. I thought after last Sunday, I was like, all right, it's time for me to give him his due because I've been calling for his benching for, I've been thinking like since week 2. But kudos Marcus Mariota and just doing research. I love just how much the team is behind them. Like every player is speaking so highly of them. So I just put together like a nice long form piece with that. So and that's
Yeah.
what we're on. Yeah, like going forward Sundays. Looking forward to recording with you. We're good. It's just we're gonna be on some pretty emotional highs, like regardless of what happens. Like, man, I would have loved to have been on last Sunday because boy,
Yeah,
that
it's a
show
good one.
must have been fun. So
Yeah,
uh,
even Dave came onto that one, so that's a
oh man,
rare occurrence. Yeah, we only see Dave after big W's. So
hey, and in fact, if they could pull this off Sunday, I could say that big W. So maybe we'll
oh
get
yeah,
another guest on. But yeah, going forward, that would be the plan, and I'm just looking forward, man. The Falcons, they're on a high, and I think we have a lot to be excited about.
I think so too. I'm excited for what should be another good game. The worst you could say about the Falcons is that they've been extremely watchable. Like every single one of their games has been eminently watchable and exciting. So as long as that keeps up, I'll be a happy camper, guys. I am Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin. Definitely check out Alan's work on thefalcoholic.com. My written stuff these days is, mostly consigned to like, little posts here and there, but most of it's over the airwaves. But I do occasionally chime in with the written stuff. And of course, in the off season, once we get to draft time, I will be putting out all kinds of draft related stuff. But guys, really appreciate you. We will see you next time on the Falcoholic Live, which of course will be the post game show that we just mentioned. So we'll see you immediately following the game on Sunday, hoping for that big Falcons dub, because not only would that get them to their first winning record in like 5 years, it would also just be a lot of fun and would really position this team in a very strong spot to challenge for the playoffs. Getting 2 W's out of what was maybe the toughest 3-game stretch on the schedule, that would be huge. So
Yes.
we will hope for that outcome. But even if they lose that game, it's not going to, I don't think, as long as it's not like terrible loss or something like that, I don't think it's really going to change too much for them. So again, guys, thanks so much. We'll talk to you next time on the Falcoholic Podcast and Falcoholic Live. Have a great day, folks.